and you have your regulars, and um, it is extremely interesting that it's the corner regulars do keep attracting the same kinds of people, and the ones who stick around fit in well with that vibe. Um, to me, it's a it. Somebody said parasocial. I would call it more of a parachurch kind of um, place. I don't know what you call it, is online space, and which to me means a higher standard should apply. This is a title I've been playing with for a while anyway, and it was kind of a video I didn't want to make because I kept putting it off because I've had so many people come, and we would try to have dialogue even privately, and you know um, and it would just not work because uh, in a sense you could say they just would give up on me. Um, because I am a difficult person, and I don't form friendships to um, scratch a personal itch. I legitimately want to try to get to know the people who become a friend. And it's like, yes, I will support you. I want to know more about you, and I'm not going to abandon you even if we disagree on something.
I
In
haven't given
exchange,
up
you'll
on
have to
you.
endure me. Huh? Say what, Claire?
I haven't given up on you, Mark.
No, I know you haven't. No, that's true. You haven't. No, I'm still not sure where we're at as people, but go ahead. Go ahead. I'm rambling, but I'm saying I'm a bit. I guess what I'm saying is it's there. The online space may be per. Maybe it can't be anything more than parasocial, as someone said in the chat. And if we're going to be, if it is to transition, it's got, if individuals may transition, because I think what we have a couple marriages in the corner that have resulted. Cassidy and I think a couple other people have gotten married. So some some relationships have progressed beyond the online social thing, but uh, I don't know. I'm probably not making
Well,
very
well,
much
I
sense.
think Chris Howard put it very well that you can have parasocial relationships that you do value, and if they suddenly, stopped appearing online anymore, you would miss them. But in a way, they're not that important. While valuable, they're not as important as your, real life relationships. Your wife, your, people who
Sure.
whose loss of well, if you lose a relationship, you'd be upset. So, but so therefore, online is where we get to act out our issues and inflict our personalities on anyone who's around to take it. And Chad, I thought, put it very well. He said, we almost have a duty to be more antisocial online than we are in real life, to make the most of our understanding of the situation. So, we can say more what we mean. And, because in a way, these people online, um, are in a way like family, because even if you don't like each other, you'll find yourself bumping into each other and in other channels that you both frequent, and it's kind of like family reunions. You might quarrel with each other, but at the end of the day, find yourself having to talk to each other in
I,
situations.
Yeah.
I, I think because you don't have the physical boundaries, the intellectual boundaries become much larger. I it feels like the online space is more of a spiritual space in many ways because it's largely disembodied. So it's a lot of disembodied intellect, perceptions of people, and yeah, I'll stop.
No,
Well,
I
I think
think somebody
maybe you
pointed
mean,
out.
Paul, that people can't punch you if you offend them, however much you offend them. They can't physically wring your neck, etc. But I think in the olden days, when people went on long train journeys, they probably used their fellow passengers as a form of entertainment and therapy, and they would, probably confide, a lot of very personal things that they wouldn't dream of talking to, confiding in their friends and family. Maybe it's kind of like that.
Maybe.
So I can punch you, but it's going to be a spiritual or psychological attack, which
Yeah,
is
but people
almost worse.
Let's
ahead.
hear from how you doing, Nathan? Hi,
people
Nathan.
always like to say, oh yeah, like people say things online that they wouldn't say to my face, but I'd be beating them up in person. But like, when's the last time you had a fight? When's the last time you hit a person in the face? Like, come on, let's not also pretend that in real life we're just going around like macho man beating people up because they disagree with us or something. Like, that's not how the world works either.
I'm a lady. I don't get into fights.
It's just, but I'm just saying it's not. I think it's actually the opposite. Like I find that in online spaces, particularly I would say around the TLC, there's some of the biggest crybabies, can't handle disagreements in the world I've ever met. And in reality, not that they would hit me, but they'd be unable to avoid hearing ideas they dislike. Whereas online, they can do that because they literally just filter everything, right? And then they remove themselves from hearing things they don't want to hear. They if they have the power, they mute and block and ban. And so I actually think it's the opposite, that rather than these spaces more reinforce people having ideas that they want, and it's not that they would hear those ideas they don't like and then beat people up in the real world. They would hear them and then realize they're dumbasses who don't know what they're talking about.
I think there's I mean, in the corporate world, there are ways of social retribution within an established social network where you can beat up on a person, or you can undermine a person socially if you are within their social network, that you cannot do in the same way in an online space. So, I mean, while it's not physical, I think the embodiment of the space creates more capacity for retribution. Therefore, therefore you are patrolling, therefore people, in order to establish these boundaries, people are much more aggressive in their opinions. Like, people are not in the corporate space, for example, as outspoken or argumentative as you see in online spaces. And like,
Right.
this little corner is better than us. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I think you're onto something. I think you guys are all saying something. You're helping me, so I appreciate it. I'm glad you brought up corporate. The corporate space is everyone's there really. You wouldn't be there if you weren't getting paid. You're there for economic benefit, right? And so it's definitely transactional. Family, church, true close friendships should be less transactional. And I think that's the passage that when you go to the 1 Corinthians chapter 6 passage I read, Paul's pleading with the Corinthians to think of themselves, to be willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the community as well as their own spiritual good. He points out the fact that you're disputatious means you're already defeated. That's a really interesting part of the passage. and and the thing is there's a way to have interesting, profound, substantive discussions without becoming ugly. And like the thing that what happened today, like I think Luke, you got, I mean, not Luke, Nathan, you got what, banned thrice? Three
Yeah, but
times?
I'm sorry, Luke monologued for I shit you not 30 minutes about like hypothetically how concerned he was about mean words and things. I'm like, how thin-skinned do you have to be to cry for 30 minutes about imagining scenarios where someone
I listened to it. He didn't cry. Let's be fair. He didn't cry, but he did go on,
There weren't
and then
tears,
he talked
like,
about Star Manning. I was expecting Star Manning and Steel Manning, and
Manning, like what?
you guys,
what was toddler?
it
Like,
didn't.
like gently stroke his butt or something. Like I don't know what the hell these people want, but they are children.
But people respond most to their own perceived weaknesses because you are hyper aware of areas you see are struggles in yourself. So, and it's a dumb jujitsu move when you say that, but it's also a reflection of their own inner struggle. And I think Luke is trying to. I think Luke can be judgy, and that's fine. I think, but he's aware of this, and he's trying to struggle with it and not do it. But I think it makes him hyper aware of it in other people, thus the rules. And I don't know. It's like, yeah, he has a channel. He can make up rules. That's why are we worried about that?
I'm not worried about it. I'm just saying I think the guy's a bit of a pussy for doing that.
Well, it's
That's fine.
It's just irritating to be talked at, and it's all nonsense anyway for a whole hour, and then, you know, finally you're allowed to speak, and then you have to take turns, and you're nannied. It's your turn now, and your turn, and your turn.
I tell you the one thing that did frustrate me about that was when the guy said an actual racist thing, right? About like he made this joke about drinking milk because only white people can produce lactase. I'd be surprised if the guy even knows what enzymes are.
Talking about Joseph.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
so then I was like, I made a joke, like I'm gonna touch my girlfriend's black tit because first off, it's funny because I know this guy can't like has never seen a woman in his life. But secondly, then he pretends he's like, oh, that's misogynistic and I'm offended. But then it's like, so you're pretending to be offended about that, but it's perfectly acceptable to you to be racist. And it's like I'm just putting together the.
I don't think he perceives it as racist.
Well, I think he.
I think straight up, he doesn't perceive it as racist.
Heading with my shin, you know, like what a fucking weak man. Like I hate these people who are like, I'm just gonna laugh with my gay little Raphael's painting in the background of Plato and Aristotle joking about drinking milk because I'm a white man. The guy looks like he can't do a single press up, can't run a mile, probably doesn't have a career that's worth anything to society, and he's on the internet talking about telos and other nonsense. Like, get a life, stop being racist, get off the internet.
I don't know. I don't want to. I don't. What a little I know about Joseph is that I think he may even be married. I think he's training to be a deacon.
Yeah, well, that explains a lot because he looked like
in the Orthodox Church. So yeah, I'm not. I like Joseph normally, but he went off on a tirade because what he thought was had to do with the stolen land part that came out on Friday live stream, and he went off on this weird Aryan thing.
Oh yeah, because that's what we need in America is more people who don't have actual jobs being deacons promoting racism whilst taking the money of the congregation. That is something society needs.
Well, I don't know any details about that. I don't know anything about that. Let's move on. I don't know about that. I think what I want, what I'm interested in is, see, you know, we're okay with those jokes, but we're not okay with your jokes. You know, this is where I think, I mean, we can either ban jokes, period, or we can learn to understand each other well enough so that we get each other's sense of humor without
it's what the humor is, though,
freaking
right?
out.
So
If there is humor, right? Oh.
my sense of humor is intolerant of like the butt of my jokes is Nazism, fascism, racism, things like that. Like I will use concepts like misogyny in my jokes to undermine and make fun of misogyny. So that undermined that what's being undermined in the jokes I'm making is misogyny and racism. The butt of the joke in the drinking milk is to promote racism, to promote racial segregation. So I first off, I don't find that funny, right? But I don't want to be in the in group with those people. I want to go, you're a scumbag for finding that funny and wanting to associate and be in a group of people who find it funny to make some kind of like weird hint that black people are inferior because they don't produce lactase. Meanwhile, you yourself have such good white genes that you can't even get a real job and have to become some kind of weirdo deacon.
I think there needs to be sufficient cultural, like, what does humor do? It takes something which is at sort of the edge of what it's acceptable to sort of play at the edge of what is acceptable and express the awkwardness of that thing being acceptable. Now, the problem is if the Venn diagram of cultural acceptance is so non-overlapping, there's no border to play on in humor. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
there's, and so, yeah, and basically it's definitely outgrouping because it plays on a common border within a culture. And so if you don't find it funny, it's because you don't understand where that border is. And you're then not in the group.
Explicitly reject weirdo racists, right? That's a possibility too. Like I understand that.
No, you just believe that the border is at a different place, and that is beyond the pale, as opposed to right at the edge.
20 years old, I was the guy drinking the milk and thinking that was funny, and I used 4chan. I was into all this stuff. I was racist. I used to listen to Wagner's Tannhauser and like the comments underneath, like we need to protect Europe, right? Shit like that. I know exactly where this guy's coming from and how he thinks. So it's not that I don't understand that that's there. It's not that I don't know where the southern border is. It's that I don't want to protect the southern border.
Could we pivot
go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering, can we pivot in a slightly different direction? And just maybe you could, I'm going to be really narcissistic and ask you guys to indulge me for a second. Why did what I say Friday trigger so many people? I don't know how much you guys saw, but if you get where I'm going with that, just run with it and tell me.
Do you mind if I take it first, Nathan, and then you, or would you like to go first?
Yeah, go.
So,
be it the Catholic thing or the stolen land thing.
No, I think it's the stolen land thing.
Pick your poison.
I think it's the stolen land thing and so how do we experience racism? I've experienced West Virginian racism and Austrian racism because I lived at least at the peripheral of both of those cultures. And West Virginia racism is very different from Austrian racism for a lot of socioeconomic reasons. And just like and just anti-African racism. We'll just ring fence that, although you could also talk about the Turkish and other things. But I don't think they're the same racism. I think they're built out of, there's definitely an ethnic outgroup thing you can find in lots of different cultures, but the source of that ethnic outgroup thing isn't the same. So I think it's when we perceive, if I take West Virginian racism and project it on a different culture, then I would be making some presuppositions about what is the source of that racism. and I'm going to get the details wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is ethnic outgrouping bad in general? Yes, but it's one of these things that we see in every culture, it cropping up all the time. And I like, how do you deal with that? But I would say, how does this relate to what you're thinking?
I have to object to that because the concepts like race don't even exist until the 17th century, right? And so they're very specific concepts.
All right, but ethnic outgrouping is very common.
Even that. I mean, you find completely different characterizations that don't run along lines of obviously genetics and biology. If you read, Roman and Greek history and people from medieval England and all sorts, these concepts do not exist because people don't think in these terms, even when they encounter people that we would obviously attribute and think of as being like a person from Africa or a black person or a Middle Eastern person, whatever. They do not think in these ways.
Are you saying that the phenotypes which we outgroup have changed? Or are you saying that people doing
phenotype is a Victorian term of biology? Like,
all right. What term would you prefer? Like visible characteristics?
No, the thing is, I'm fine using that term as long as we accept its contingent history and where it comes from, and not think that it gives us some Archimedean point outside of language where we're tethered into the structural race realism of the world or something. Because the ways of dividing up the world are modern and recent, and they're not universal. We know they're not. Empirically, there are even cultures in the Anglo-American world that are not like this.
But all right, so is your issue, I mean, I think there's tribal outgrouping. So are you saying that outgrouping doesn't...
More examples of racism than in the Bible Belt in America, but that doesn't mean all humans and all cultures are racist, or that this is like something that's innate or natural in people. I don't think you can justify it in that. Well, I think you can try to justify it in that way. I think the justification is both empirically false, and that even if it were the case, it wouldn't be the case.
So what paper are you quoting? I mean, like when we use the word empirically false, what paper are you referring to?
Field linguistic studies of people who have gone to live in tribes all around and have found out different things. I mean, one of the ones I'm most familiar with is Daniel Everett's work with the Piraha. But I mean, okay, I'll just go and get a book and go through all the sources, and I'll go, here's fucking like Viktor Blobochenko in 1974, and it'll establish nothing. But like,
all right, I think that is useful contextually because
why doing it to make this bullshit. So here's this point. Here's this book, right? Race: The History of an Idea in the West, and let's just read through the entire book and pull out some sources, because that's what we have to do now. Okay. Oh, he's a guy who puts the sources at the end of the chapter.
I hate when they do that.
You can't just go right to the back.
But you think you're done with you think you have that 5 more pages in the chapter, and then you're like, oh yeah, I get to skip these 5.
While Nathan's looking, Claire, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I think you trigger people, Mark, because of your frequent expressions of liberal guilt. I guess the zeitgeist is changing from that, and maybe liberal guilt. The expression of liberal guilt is no longer fashionable, I guess, and
I don't know
think
if it ever was, but go ahead. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
I think once upon a time it was quite fashionable, and I suppose.
Well, can I give you some context real quick on that? Because with regard to why I used the word stolen land, how that came up was Sam was on a tirade, as you recall, expressing the virtues of Protestantism, basically, and I said, and they came and did it all on stolen land. Yay, America! I think I said something along those lines, somewhat sarcastic, and wasn't. And then then for some reason that got picked up and was taken more seriously. And I mean, and then I only made the point at the end, I guess, was I said, well, if you need a gun to plant use the land, if you come across a piece of land and you want to plant a crop on it and you have to kill the people who are there to plant and harvest your crop, what is it if it isn't stolen? And nobody had an answer, of course. They just
their answer is I don't care, but then they just like say a whole load of nothing to justify I don't care, basically.
Yeah. And then of course it's always why don't you return it? Why don't you give your house to? See, it's always some deflection on. Let's just look at the thing as it is. We don't have to even do anything about it, but can we at least be honest about the thing that we're looking at?
Because they have got nothing else going for them in life except.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, but Mark, on the question of
I agree with Claire.
imperialism, what?
You agree,
with Claire?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of it. And it ties
You
into
agree
just
with me, Paul?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. When you say the right thing, I'll agree with you.
Oh, that's nice.
He's a good liberal.
Yes, and possibly a good Catholic, but I suppose I was saying that Catholicism is also an imperial religion, and which is
again?
why I
say that
couldn't
one more
quite
time?
understand what
What's that again?
Catholicism is an imperial religion.
Catholicism is an imperial religion, right? So that was what puzzled me about why you thought the solution was Catholicism, because once upon a time all of Europe was Catholic, and Catholicism came from Rome, and it's
there were no wars. And there were no wars, and it was eternal peace at that time.
Well, when the empire is working properly, you get Pax Romana and Pax Britannia and Pax Americana and all those. But when it collapses, I guess it's kind of like
the Druid
a big ship sinking, maybe sucking everything down with it. But I think Christianity is an imperial religion, and so is Islam, and frankly, so is Judaism. When you think of how the Jews conquered Canaan, and they it was occupied territory, but the Canaanites were idolaters, and the Jews were not, and because they obeyed the laws of God, they conquered Canaan and founded the ancient kingdom of Israel.
I think there's a lot of examples of, we could call it Catholic imperialism. I would also say there's a lot of instances of Catholic incorporating the existing cultures and trying to build cultural bridges. So I'm going to make the both and. There's definitely a brand of Catholicism which has had empirical tendencies, but then there's also, it's sort of the ground up. How do we bring what we believe to be true into the culture, into the local cultures? And that's